What about Douglas Hofstadter's idea of consciousness, the strange loop? I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but what do you think of it? And do you mind explaining to the audience the idea, as far as you understand it?
I don't think that I can adequately explain it. To me, Hofstadter is bound to a tradition of computer science that is taking Gödel as talking about a property of the languages that he still tried to use. So he's not a proper computationalist. He is using classical semantics to describe computational system, and it leads to contradictions in his descriptions. And I think that the strange loop is in the class of these contradictions. And I think that our consciousness is not strange as a loop. There is some loop going on, but it's not a strange loop at all. It's a loop that goes between the contents of the attention and paying attention to the fact that we still pay attention, so we notice that we haven't drifted off.
So the strange loop doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a strange loop because it's predicated on false mathematics or mathematics that doesn't apply.
Yes, but I'm not sure if I represent it adequately, and I would have to reread it and properly formulate it. So I am reluctant to talk about it because I cannot properly translate and define it here. I would have to look it up again.
Yeah, no problem. How about the holonomic theory, the holonomic brain theory?
Oh, it's a long time that I stumbled into this one. I didn't quite understand how it was explaining consciousness. So there is a certain way in which it is pointing at the hierarchies of perception that we have, and it's accurate. But I haven't understood how the holonomic theory explains consciousness. In the sense that I didn't see a specification that can implement and end up as a conscious system.
How about Daniel Dennett's idea of consciousness? Or at least his explanation as to how consciousness arises and what it is.
I think that Dennett, as far as I understand, Dennett is there's nothing wrong with what Dennett says. The main version so the things that I read from him, I don't have any objections except that he seems to ignore the part that most people struggle with, which is phenomenal experience. So basically, he does make fun of the people that explain how Mary proves that machines cannot be conscious, and he's justified in making fun of them, and it's a very good read. But he is not going to convince any of these people, because he is not deconstructing the thing that they are struggling with, which is phenomenal experience. He's mostly seems to be ignoring it.
So it's incomplete. It's correct, but incomplete.
I suspect that he doesn't think that there's that much to explain, because he may not have that much phenomenal experience. He probably has aphantasia. I'm only speculating here. It could be that basically Dennett's mind is so conceptual that he doesn't think that there is that much to explain. And there are people which are rarely visiting the conceptual realm, and they have the experience that this logical language is unfit to describe anything of consequence in real everyday life. So how could he explain something that is so fundamental as phenomenal experience, right? You need art to describe it. And Dennett is so far removed from the way that he speaks, talks, things, operates, and his own mind operates, that it's very hard, I think, to see for the phenomenologists how Dennett is actually talking about the same thing. But having said that, I do think that Dennett is right. Just he is not giving us a specification that we can implement at this point. And again, he's a philosopher, so he's not dealing with the specifications very much. So when I read Dennett, I don't object to anything that I read so far, but I also learned very little. It's basically trivially true what he says.
How about the sensory motor theory?
So what does it mean to have a sensory motor theory of consciousness? I suspect that there are a number of people that refer to sensory motor integration as at the core of consciousness. And you could say that there is a notion of agency that results from performing actions and sending the result of the actions and making sense of the relationship between actions and perception. When I was confronted with this notion, I thought, well, how do you know that there is action? What exists is eventually just a notion of perception.
Have you heard of Bergson's theory of consciousness?
Wait, let's go.
Sorry.
Let's continue with the sensory motor thing. If you're still.
Yeah, no, I apologize. I took a pause as you were finished.
No.
My bad. By the way, just in case I'm a bit loopy, I haven't had sleep, proper sleep in like 3 days, and I've only eaten one meal in 2 hours approximately, because I'm in the middle of a fast. So if I seem a bit drowsy or slow, please forgive me.
I have no difficulty forgiving you.
Okay, why don't you continue about the sensory motor?
So I suspect that we discover our body, the motor aspect, only through the senses. So it's basically we discover the control architecture. We discover that there is a relationship between the environment and certain states which we notice as being intention states, and the body that is the instrument of translating intentional states into changes in the environment. And this control hierarchy of intention, of originating and motivation and needs, and then this leading to the initiation of motor actions, and the initiation of motor actions leading to physical actions or mental operations, and then as a result to changes in the world, in the perceived external world or in the perceived mental world, and this again leading to changes in our needs and motivations and so on. This discovery of the loop is only possible because we have the entire loop given. If any element of this loop was missing, we would not be able to discover our own agency. Right? We only discover our bodies as being that instrument. We wouldn't discover that we have a body outside of volitional states. We wouldn't discover volitional states in the absence of the body. And the body would also be a mental body that is able to perform mathematical operations. That's probably sufficient for this. But you will need to see some outcome of your actions and something that some way to affect these outcomes to arrive at the notion of your own agency. And the type of intelligence that makes us distinct is the ability to conceptualize ourselves as an agent embedded into the universe. The generality of our intelligence is given by us having to solve control problems that are so general that we need to model ourselves, that we need to reverse engineer us. Right? Imagine you start out with a thermostat. The thermostat is a system that controls the temperature in the room based on a measurement of the temperature and a control impulse that turns the heating element on and off. Now imagine that this thermometer is very close to the heating element, so there's some feedback between the heating element and the measurement that you make. And if you want to get the temperature in the room right and don't want to run into wild fluctuations, you might need to have a second order control loop. And the second order control loop is basically correcting the measurement that you're making as a sensor for the activity of the heating element. Which means now the second order control loop will have to implement a model of the interaction between heating element and heater. And it might have to implement a model of the temperature of the heater itself and how much this contributes to the temperature in the vicinity.
And the second order control group is what's conscious in this example?
No, this is just a second order model. No, it's so basically you're now looking at a nested system, a nested cybernetic loop. And if you have a loop where you, for instance, have a change in volume of air, because you open the window or not, you might need to have a third order control loop that is now measuring how the heating element is changing the temperature of the room depending on the third hidden variable. And you try to guess at this hidden variable. And now if you also have temperature fluctuations on the outside, because maybe you have a change of season and the air that comes in and out, but now that may require more complicated loops, right? And eventually you will also need to have a model that describes